I, 29F, am currently sitting in a half-empty apartment, sipping a lukewarm coffee and looking at a certified mail receipt that is about to ruin 2 lives. For 15 years I had a shadow. My best friend, 29F, was the kind of person who didn't just want what you had. She wanted to be the reason you lost it. She was the maid of honor at my wedding, the first person I called when I got promoted, and the woman who spent every girl's night telling me how lucky I was to have a husband, 32M, who was a high-earning surgical consultant. She was always there, lurking in the periphery of my marriage. She'd make comments about his physique while I was in the kitchen, or send him funny late-night memes that always seemed to involve a lot of suggestive subtext. I ignored it because I trusted him. I thought our foundation was solid. I was wrong. The ordinary event that sparked the collapse happened on a Tuesday evening. I came home early from a business trip to surprise my husband, only to find him in our home office, white-knuckled, staring at a laptop screen. He didn't hear me come in. I saw the screen before he could slam it shut. A private offshore betting portal. The balance was a negative 6-figure number. "What is that?" I asked. The silence that followed was the sound of my life fracturing. "It's under control," he stammered, his face a ghostly shade of gray. "It's just a bad run. I'm going to fix it." 6 figures? "We were supposed to put that toward the new house," I said. My voice was eerily calm. "How long has this been going on?" "A year," he whispered. That night I didn't scream. I went to the guest room and started digging. I found the hidden credit cards, the consulting loans from predatory lenders, and the total tally. $100,000 in high-interest gambling debt. But I found something else too. I found a string of deleted messages on our shared iPad. Messages from my best friend. She wasn't just comforting him about his stress. She was encouraging the habit. She was telling him he was a big player, that his luck was about to turn, and that if he just doubled down, he'd be the king of the world again. She was feeding the fire so she could watch him burn, all while sending me thinking of you flowers. This was her first act of entitlement, the emotional vulture. She was intentionally destabilizing my husband's mental health to make him dependent on her support while he was at his lowest. She wanted to swoop in and save the man she thought was a rich prize, not realizing she was actually fighting for a sinking ship. "You're struggling, baby," one of her texts read. "She doesn't understand the pressure you're under." "I do. Come over. Let's talk about that investment I mentioned. You're one win away from freedom." I realized then that I was married to a man who had gambled away our future, and my best friend was the one holding the cards. I could have divorced him that night and fought for the scraps, but I decided to give them exactly what they wanted. I decided to let her win the prize she'd worked so hard to steal. Stay tuned for part 2. I'm about to show you the girls' trip, where I intentionally left them alone together, and the moment I discovered their affair while my lawyer was already drafting the debt transfer agreements. Subscribe if you want to see a best friend realize she just won a $100,000 liability. For the next month, I played the role of the oblivious, overworked wife to perfection. I'd come home and find my best friend, already there, sitting on my sofa, sharing a bottle of wine with my husband. She'd give me that pitying look, the one that said I was too boring and corporate to truly understand a man like him. She started wearing shorter dresses and forgetting to put on a bra when she knew he'd be home. This was her second act of entitlement, the territorial marking. She started rearranging my throw pillows and suggesting we change the brand of coffee we used. She was auditioning for my life right in front of me. "You look so tired, honey," she said to me one evening, leaning back so her legs were draped toward my husband. "You really should take that spa weekend I mentioned. You're becoming so rigid. He needs someone with a bit more spark around here to help him de-stress." My husband, the man who owed more money than he could ever pay back, just looked at her with this desperate, glazed-over adoration. He saw her as his lifeline, the only person who didn't judge his secret habit. He didn't realize that I was watching his offshore account balance like a hawk. Every time he de-stressed with her, he'd find the courage to place another $5,000 bet. "You're right," I said, smiling at them both. "I do need a break. In fact, I've booked a 5-day business retreat in Vegas. I'll be gone from Wednesday to Sunday." The spark that went off in her eyes was almost comical. She thought I was handing her the keys to the kingdom. She thought this was her moment to finally seal the deal. The day before I left, I sat down with my attorney. In our state, debt incurred during a marriage for non-marital purposes, like gambling, can be classified as separate debt if the other spouse was unaware and didn't benefit. I had the logs. I had the tripwire I'd set on his accounts. I also had a very specific legal document, a postnuptial agreement with an infidelity clause. I told my husband months ago that we needed to sign investment papers to protect our joint assets for the future. He was so distracted by his losses and his best friend that he'd signed the stack of papers without even reading the fine print. That investment paper was actually a postnup that stated if he committed adultery, he would assume 100% of any personal liabilities, including all gambling debts, and waive any claim to my retirement accounts or the equity in our apartment. I headed to Vegas, but I only went as far as a hotel 2 towns over. I'd installed a high-definition, cloud-based nanny cam in the living room, something I told him was for security, while I was away. Wednesday night, the footage was crystal clear. My best friend didn't even wait for the sun to go down. She showed up at my house with a suitcase. Not a bag for a sleepover, a suitcase. She was moving in. I watched on my phone as they drank my expensive scotch. I watched as she whispered in his ear that he should go big on the offshore game that night. And then I watched as they moved toward the primary bedroom. The seduction was complete. She had won. She was in my bed, with my husband dreaming of the doctor's wife life she was about to inherit. While they were busy celebrating her victory, I was busy filing the papers. I sent a digital copy of the postnup, the gambling logs, and the time-stamped video evidence to my husband's email with a subject line: "The bill is due." Stay tuned for part 3. I'm about to show you the homecoming where I walked in on them eating breakfast in my kitchen, and the moment she realized she wasn't just getting a man, she was getting a $100,000 mountain of debt that I'd legally tied around his neck. Subscribe if you want to see a gold digger realize she just dug into a toxic waste dump. I walked into my own kitchen on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. The smell of frying bacon filled the air, my bacon in my pans on my stove. My best friend was standing there wearing one of my husband's oversized dress shirts, her hair a mess, looking like she just stepped out of a rom-com. My husband was sitting at the island, a glass of orange juice in his hand, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. The look of pure, unadulterated shock that hit their faces when I set my suitcase down was worth every cent I'd spent on the private investigator. "Sarah? You're supposed to be in Vegas until tonight," my husband stammered, nearly knocking over his juice. My best friend didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. This was her third act of entitlement, the squatter's confidence. She actually leaned against the counter and took a sip of coffee. "Well, I guess the cat's out of the bag. Look, Sarah, we didn't want it to happen this way, but we can't help how we feel. He needs someone who supports his passions, not someone who judges his every move. It's over." "Oh, I know it's over," I said, pulling a thick manila envelope out of my bag and sliding it across the marble countertop. "I've known it was over since I found the offshore betting logs. And the nanny cam footage from Wednesday through last night? It's very high def, by the way. You should really check your angles next time." My husband's face went from pale to a sickly, translucent white. "Nanny cam? Sarah, wait. No, let's look at the passions you mentioned," I said, looking at my best friend. "You've been telling him to go big, right? Telling him he's a player? Well, he took your advice. While I was in Vegas, he put 50 grand on a parlay spread. He lost. The total debt is now sitting at exactly $100,000. And thanks to the postnuptial agreement he signed last month, the one with the infidelity clause, that debt is now legally his sole responsibility." I turned to my husband. "According to the agreement, your adultery constitutes a material breach. You've waived all rights to the equity in this apartment, my 401k, and the savings account. You have 2 hours to pack your things. And since you're currently in default on 3 high-interest personal loans that I've now officially disassociated from my credit profile, I imagine the collectors will be calling your new support system shortly." My best friend's smirk finally vanished. She looked at my husband, then at the papers, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. "What debt? He's a surgical consultant. He makes $300 a year. He grosses $300 a year, I corrected her. But he nets zero after the interest payments on his passions. He doesn't have a savings account. He doesn't even own his car. It's a lease that's 2 months behind. You wanted my life? Congratulations. You just inherited a man who is legally broke and owes 6 figures to people who don't take I'm sorry for an answer. My husband grabbed my arm, his voice cracking. Sarah, you can't do this. That postnup. I didn't read it. You tricked me. You're a doctor, I said, shaking his hand off. You sign legal documents every day. I didn't read it doesn't hold up in a court of law, especially when there's video evidence of you committing the exact act that triggers the clause. Now move. You're dripping grease on my rug. The satisfying revenge was watching the realization sink into my best friend's face. She wasn't the winner. She was the new co-signer for a catastrophe. She looked at my husband not with love, but with the dawning horror that she'd just stolen a mountain of trash thinking it was gold. Stay tuned for part 4. I'm about to show you the collection agency phone call she started receiving when she tried to hide him at her apartment, and the final legal checkmate, where I sued her for alienation of affection to recoup the household funds they spent on their affair. Subscribe if you want to see a best friend realize she's the one paying for the honeymoon. The following 2 weeks were a masterclass in legal and financial demolition. My ex-husband and my best friend moved into her cramped 1-bedroom apartment, thinking they could wait out the storm. They didn't realize I wasn't just letting them go. I was letting the dogs out. Since my husband had defaulted on the personal loans I'd discovered, and the postnuptial agreement had been filed and validated by the court, the creditors no longer had any claim to my assets. They turned their sights entirely on him. I sat in my quiet, peaceful apartment, now legally 100% mine, and listened to the voicemails he left. They went from angry to begging, then to pure, unadulterated panic. Sarah, please, he sobbed in one message. They came to the clinic. They served me papers in front of the chief of surgery. I'm being suspended pending an ethics review because of the gambling debts. They think I'm a liability for malpractice. You have to tell them the postnup was a mistake. I didn't call back. Instead, I sent my best friend a certified letter. This was her 4th act of entitlement, the financial shield. She thought that because she wasn't the one who placed the bets, her own savings were safe. She was wrong. In our state, we have a specific statute regarding tortious interference with a marital relationship and fraudulent transfer. I filed a civil suit against her, alleging that she had intentionally manipulated a person with a known gambling addiction into deepening his debt to alienate him from his spouse. More importantly, I had the receipts showing he had used $15,000 from our emergency fund, money I had contributed, to buy her a designer watch and pay her past due rent while they were sneaking around. I wasn't just asking for the money back. I was suing for damages. You can't sue me for his choices, she screamed when she finally cornered me outside my office. She looked terrible. The spark was gone, replaced by dark circles and a cheap, frantic energy. We're in love. You're just a bitter, lonely woman trying to take what little we have left. I'm not taking what you have, I said, pausing as I opened my car door. I'm taking back what you stole. That $15,000 was for my mother's medical care, and you watched him hand it to you over dinner while you patted my hand and told me everything would be okay. That's not love, honey. That's conversion of assets. He's going to lose his license, she shrieked. How are we supposed to pay for anything? Maybe you should check the morning mail, I said. I believe the repo man was looking for that luxury SUV he's been letting you drive. Since the lease was in his name and the payments are 90 days late, they didn't really care that you liked the heated seats. As if on cue, her phone started vibrating. It was him, probably calling to tell her that the tow truck was currently pulling his status symbol out of her apartment parking lot. The satisfying revenge was the discovery phase of the lawsuit. My lawyer pulled her bank records and revealed that she had been borrowing money from her own parents to cover the interest on his debts, lying to them that she was starting a business. She had poisoned her own well to keep a sinking ship afloat. The final court date wasn't the dramatic showdown she expected. It was a quiet, clinical burial of her entire life. My best friend sat at the defense table, looking like a ghost of the woman who had smirked in my kitchen. My ex-husband wasn't even there. He'd sent a representative to declare his intent to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, effectively leaving her to face my civil suit for tortious interference and conversion of assets alone. The judge didn't take long to look at the evidence. The logs of her encouraging his gambling, the receipts for the jewelry he bought her with my money, and the video of her moving into my home while the bed was still warm were undeniable. She was ordered to pay back the $15,000 in stolen funds plus $20,000 in punitive damages for intentional emotional distress. "I don't have it," she sobbed as the gavel dropped. "I have nothing left. He spent everything I had. My parents won't even talk to me." "The court doesn't care about your liquid status," my lawyer informed her. "A lien has already been placed on your future earnings, and your retirement account has been frozen for liquidation. You'll be paying for that win for the next decade." The satisfying revenge came an hour later. I was walking to my car when I saw her standing on the sidewalk, clutching her phone and screaming into the voicemail. She was calling my ex-husband, begging him to come pick her up because her car, the one she'd bought with her business loan, had been impounded for unpaid tickets he'd racked up. I pulled up next to her, lowered my window, and watched as she finally got a text back. She looked at the screen and literally collapsed onto the curb. I saw the preview on her screen as she dropped it. It was from a new number. "Hey, sorry. I've moved in with a friend from the clinic. She understands my struggle better. Don't call me again, you're too much drama. Good luck with the debt." He had found his next lifeline, a younger nurse at the clinic who probably hadn't heard about the audit yet. He dumped my best friend the second she became a financial liability, exactly the way he dumped me when he thought she was a social upgrade. "He left you," I said, leaning out the window. "Just like I told you he would. You didn't steal a husband, honey. You volunteered to be a victim of a man who doesn't know how to love anything but a parley." "Sarah, please," she whispered, looking up at me through smeared mascara. "I have nowhere to go. Can you help me get home?" "I already helped you," I said, putting the car in gear. "I helped you get exactly what you wanted. You wanted my life? Well, this is the part where you realize I was the only thing keeping that life from falling apart. Enjoy the bus ride." I drove away, and for the first time in 15 years, the shadow was gone. I'm living in my quiet, debt-free apartment now. My credit score is rising, my career is peaking, and I never have to worry about who is texting my husband at 2 a.m. I lost a friend and a husband, but I gained my freedom and a $35,000 check that's going straight into my mother's care fund. I realize that the ultimate gamble isn't a hand of cards. It's trusting someone who is only there for the winning streak. If you enjoyed watching a best friend realize she was just a temporary ATM for a man who doesn't have a soul, hit that subscribe button. I've got a work bestie who thinks my new promotion means she gets to delegate her entire workload to me while she naps in the break room.